So for this stop ULEZ evidence, basically for the ancient liberties of London, the liberties were definitely in place, at least from the Romans. But there must be something in the Edward Confessor laws about it, surely, or even in the Roman law, definitely about the tolls. But this is the very first proper charter for London that we've got from the very first William. This is the William Charter. It's actually quite short, and what it says here is it says, William the King friendly salutes, William the Bishop and Godfrey the Portreeve and all the burgesses within London, both French and English, and I declare that I grant you to be all law-worthy, as you were in the days of King Edward. And I grant that every child shall be his father's heir after his father's days, and I will not suffer any person to do you wrong. God keep you. Right, well, obviously, unless you've broken the law, because it says that all be law-worthy. So that means, to follow and obey the law. If you're not law-worthy, then surely, people can act to make you law-worthy. So that means that you're suffering someone else some wrong, or there is some wrong being done that needs to be put right. But everyone's kicking off at the moment about this whole farmers' inheritance tax. At the moment, there's just been a huge protest in London. I think Jeremy Clarkson turned up for it, about inheritance tax. And in the Magna Carta here, there is a Magna Carta as well. The Magna Carta, I think, was a lot later. This is King William, so this is well before Magna Carta. So this is actually before the Magna Carta. This is before Magna Carta. So actually, so these London liberties actually, everyone talks about the Magna Carta being kind of like the oldest proper law. Although we've got the laws of Edward the Confessor, which were a lot older. We've actually got those still, because that's where the wheel reef law is. But this actually, if every son will be his father's heir, does that mean that he gets all the things and all the family and house and everything? Well, this is the thing. If every son is going to be his father's heir, or every child, no, it says child. It doesn't say son, it says child. I grant that every child shall be his father's heir after his father's days, and I will not suffer any person to do you wrong. God keep you. Well, this is the thing, right? At the moment, the government are taxing inheritance. Now, if you have a tax on inheritance in the first place, well, that means that the government are inheriting some of your possessions, right? And the more and more tax they get, the more and more of the things that the government are inheriting, and a lot of these big farms, a lot of these really, 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 really big farms, they're saying that the value in the farm is the property and the assets, which are actual possessions, not cash or money. You tax people cash or money, but if they can't afford to pay the tax, they've got to sell the property. But that means you're actually taking the property off them. So that means that the government are actually inheriting the buildings, or you've got to sell the buildings to give the money to the government. So they're forcing some of the buildings off you that you inherit. So you're not actually ending up inheriting them at all, which that's got to be wrong. The government cannot inherit your things, because the children of the parents are not inheriting the actual property. The government are inheriting some of it. And it actually says that the actual children have got to inherit it. Now, we pay enough tax. We pay every single time you trade something or sell or buy something, the government gets tax on that. So that means every single transaction, unless it's not for profit, and we know they've been taxing some things that are not for profit, like small bodies that have got a political objective that aren't registered, because you don't need to register unless you're a big charity or non-profit. Petitions registered with government are actually registered, but you're only a small body, right? There are other things you can do as a small body, but petitioning a petition is always to the government, so you're always letting them know that you're doing it, usually, because you have to inform them of what you want or what you ask for. It's like submitting a case to a court. You get a number, but there's a lot of tax that people aren't being paid on their small bodies, non-profit bodies, which I've argued this with HM Revenue and Customs. We get taxed on our pensions. That's money that you put away that you didn't previously have tax on it. There's a lot of things we're getting taxed on. Now, I can't see how the passing of things that you've already paid tax, like when you buy a house, you pay tax on it. When you buy a car, you pay tax on it. When you buy sofas, you pay tax on them. So everything you've actually got, you pay tax on it to get it. So why you would have the government pay tax on it again when you pass it on to your children, it is very, very strange, because someone's got to take it on. Something exists, right? It's literally a continuation, really. Now, if the actual children themselves want to dispute who's having what or what part of it, that's in the will. But why should the will of what? Okay, put it this way: if you've got 3 children and you've got property like one of these big farms, right? And in your will, you divide the farm between 3 children, okay? Right? So that means that part of it's going to, if you've got Rod, Jane and Freddie, for example, part of it goes to Rod, part of it goes to Jane, and part of it goes to Freddie. So it's been broken up anyway. And if one of them wants to keep the house, but other wants to, they might actually end up themselves, resolving it willfully. Some of the children say, well, you keep the house, but I'll have the things, or whatever. Or they might have to sell the house to split it between themselves, but one of them might want to live in it, but it might be worth more than what it was allocated for. So he might give the other sibling some money to keep the house or whatever. Now, that's up to them. That's their own wills, and that's the will that's written in law of the parents. But then it's also between the children to sort out and argue and settle as by law, right? If they want to sell it and give it away, fair enough, right? Now, if you sell something, the government get tax on it. Now, if you're going to sell something, you're going to sell something. If you aren't, you aren't, right? But why should the government suddenly insert itself, really, at all in inheritance, right? As a beneficiary, as if the government was one of those children, Why should the government insert itself as like, okay, Rod gets a third of it, Jane gets a third of it, and Freddie only gets a quarter of it, and then the government get whatever, 10-20% of it or whatever, because the government then is acting as if it itself is one of the children. It's claiming that it's almost kind of like if it's His Majesty's government, it's almost kind of like saying that William or Harry gets a bit of your house when you inherit it. A bit goes to William or Harry or something like that, or to everyone in the whole country. Because at the end of the day, tax, right, is meant to pay for the streets being maintained and, the country being run. So that means that when you inherit your house, everyone what you're doing is you're actually giving a bit to everyone in the whole country. Everyone in the whole country is getting a bit of your property when you inherit it. So everyone's inheriting a bit of it. But on here it says that the children will be the heirs only, right? Surely. So I don't see how they can tax inheritance at all from anyone. Now, if the government want to, if the building is split between, what the government, I think that, right, there's already the Liberties of London, which is the government aren't supposed to tax the road, the use of the road, the travel on the roads, not on the King's Peace. It's meant to be a free route. That's meant to be paid for by everyone, not actually the drivers, not the road user. It's not really meant to be the road user who pays for the main roads. They're meant to be for everyone because everyone's benefiting from them. If you think about it, okay, if you're going on holiday travelling, that's for you yourself. It's your own travel to the seaside and your family. But as for commerce on the roads, okay, if a haulage company is using the road and he's making a profit out of his company, right, the haulage company's paying road tax, right? But without that haulage company, you wouldn't have any products. We couldn't have food. We couldn't have sofas. We couldn't have microwave ovens. We couldn't have fridges. We couldn't have all these things because how does it get to your house? Every time it gets to your house, someone's delivered it or brought it or picked it up or it got to the shop that's local to you, right? So that's the thing with the roads. And why really all the taxes that we pay on the products, like if you buy a DVD, right, even that DVD has got to you, you travelled to town to pick it up, but how did it get into the local town near you? If it was made in America, it went on a truck, it went on a boat, it went on a plane. So when you pay for that tax for that DVD, why has some of that money not gone to maintain the roads? This is the thing. But instead of, the roads are meant to be maintained and built, paying for the maintenance and building of the roads. But what the government are actually doing now is, instead of collecting from everyone in the whole country for the benefit and maintaining of the roads for everyone, what they're doing is they're actually charging people for the travel and use on the road. Now, the travel and use on the main road was not chargeable to the road users. That means that, if you had a horse and cart, you'd already paid for the horse and you'd already paid for the cart, then you didn't no longer have to pay for the roads. And what the government are wanting to bring in now is this pay per mile. So they're wanting to actually, for the pleasure or the privilege of using the road and travelling, they want to tax you. Now, if you're going to the seaside, that means that it's like a fun tax, basically. It's like a leisure tax. It's like, you have to play squash in a squash club, but you have to pay to travel to the seaside. Is that right? I don't necessarily think that's legal, at least on the main major roads. Some of the smaller roads had tolls, but those tolls the reason those tolls were there wasn't just so meant to be just for the profit so they could make loads of money out of everyone. It was meant to be because those roads were poor. They were ill-maintained. They weren't very good. They were not amazing roads. They weren't very well built or maintained. And now all roads are well built and maintained. Well, they're not all dirt tracks, are they, right? So the thing is that this current government want to squeeze money out of people when they're actually just doing anything in life. Anything that you seem to be, gifts in kind, anything that you seem to be getting pleasure out of or enjoy, the government seem to want to tax you on it, except, right, it means that if you are enjoying life, it literally, you might as well, it's like the electric chair in America, right? In America, if you're a criminal, a really, really severely bad criminal of the worst kind, you can face the lethal injection or the chair. But the way that Keir Starmer, I think, believes that if you are sat on a chair and you're having fun, just by sat there, you owe him some money. Like, oh, you're having fun in life, you're enjoying yourself, you owe me something, right? Which, I mean, this is the thing with game shows, you know. I don't like game show hosts. I can't stand them because they get all these studio audiences in and it's all fake. It's not real life. And then after, you know, you turn the TV off and there's all the fake applause and the fake smiles and the fake positivity, you go back to life. And what it actually does is it's almost kind of like if you get a mobile phone and you tweak the colours and it makes it brighter, and then you get used to that and you like it, and then when you're not using your mobile phone, you go back to normal life and the colours are dull, it makes the rest of life seem dull and depressing compared to what they're selling you through the TV and with the studio audiences. And I think that's what makes a lot of people resort to crime and criminality, because real life isn't that good after that. You know, normal life experiences, sitting in a park with a child, or just being with your family, or just walking down the street kicking leaves in the autumn. I'm quite surprised Keir Starmer doesn't charge you for kicking leaves in the autumn. Like, oh, in autumn, that's like a Christmas card cover, you know, we're going to charge you for kicking the leaves in autumn. Or I'm quite surprised that if it snows, Starmer doesn't charge you for building snowmen because you're getting some fun out of it. And, you know, it's almost like, oh, we live next to a river, let's build a water wheel and get some electricity off this river, right? We'll get some electricity off this river. Oh no, you've got an asset there, you can't have free electricity for life, the government wants some money from you, you're getting something good. It's almost like saying, oh, if it snows and you get some fun out of building a snowman, the government wants some money out of it because, you know, that snow is like a river, you know, it give you some fun. So the government wants some of that money out of it, you know, like charge you, right? But ironically, the government are using all this tax money to build us parks for free, right? So they'll build a park with some little swings and slides, right? And that will have all paid for that. They don't charge anyone into it. I'm quite surprised that Keir Starmer isn't charging people into the parks that we paid for ourselves and built, you know, with little kids on them. But I appreciate that some of those parks are kind of fun for little small children, like up to 4-year-old, right, on the swings and that, right? But there's a lot of them that get spoiled. I mean, a woman built an amazing park for her son who had passed away as a memorial, right? And it was brilliant. But then she just kept getting more and more money in, and she kept doing more and more things, and it kind of went over the top and spoiled it, which was, I know that it was a very upsetting experience, but it sometimes there's just too much money. And a lot of the times these councils are getting money in to redo the town centre, redo the town centre, redo the town centre, redo the town centre, and they're never content with it generation after generation, whereas other towns in the south are proud of their town centres and they don't want to change them, like, you know, Dorchester or Winchcombe or any of these Cotswold villages. They wouldn't dream of touching them. They already think that they're the dog's bollocks or, you know, amazing, and they wouldn't dream. It never needs changing. And that's the grievance that I've got with our council. I mean, it had a major upgrade of the town centre in the 1800s, but they're never satisfied, and now they're demolishing it again. And where's the money coming from? The central government. All that money on this town centre from that money pot for central government could have been going to, you know, why do these farmers need to, you know, be giving inheritance tax to the government? The government are giving far too much money out to town centre redevelopment that doesn't need doing. There's nothing wrong with. How are they getting the money? It's people like Barry Shearman MP who are managing to get the money for them, or the councillors, or these HS2 projects, or, you know, now, you know, back to the inheritance tax again, sorry. So what I'm effectively saying is, you know, a lot of these things that the government provide out of the taxpayer money aren't actually that good. A lot of them are a waste of money. I know things that the government have bought, like local, you know, like speed bumps, local parks, all these little things that are kind of naff. And I think that a lot of the teenagers, once they pass the age of 4-year-old and they've been laughing on those swings and slides, they usually are out of date and they get rid of them anyway. So it's not like the children are hanging around in a place where they grew up and it's sentimental and it's like, oh, I used to play on that as a little kid. Like, you know, you go to Lincolnshire and there's some, like, you know, a metal horse that you sit on that you used to play on as a kid, and you go back to it for fond memories. It's gone. You know, oh no, that's crap. You know, everything that you grew up with and like climb trees in a park or whatever that's sentimental, that actually has some meaning for you as a teenager, they scrapped it, they got rid of it. So all these little parks and things that they're building for these kids now and putting all our money into, and it's all right for the 4-year-olds. By the time they grew up, they said, oh, that's crap now, what a new one. So it again, more and more money. And the thing with the teenagers is they don't relate to it. They don't feel like they've got any ancestry there. It's not like there's a Channel 5 programme on last night, that Ben guy or whatever, and he was sat with this guy who teaches about learning about nature and making things in like a workshop, almost like a prehistoric workshop or a Celtic workshop, you know, doing things outdoors and making things, cooking, getting with nature. It because the council are perpetually bulldozing places that you grew up in, trees you climbed, even little things you played on, you've got no, you're not rooted in it. Like it's not like your ancient ancestors or anything. And that's the thing with Charles. When Charles is knocking around his estate, you know, this is like, you know, George III or William II or Harold II or whatever. Charles doesn't appreciate that, you know, no matter what, you know, no matter all of these Republic UK demos when, you know, they're going to the Archbishop of Canterbury's church and, you know, you've got Graham Smith shouting through a megaphone at Charles saying, you know, not my king, not my king, not my king, not my king. Charles can always go back to Windsor, always go to Balmoral, always go to Sandringham and walk around and kick leaves on the grounds, you know, and go shooting with Andrew. And, you know, they've got all the memorials to all our ancestors, you know, going back, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, all of the knights of the realm that they knighted, all the memorials, you know, it's their history built up and around us and everyone's even celebrating that. So, but what have we got? Nothing. And when these kids are walking around, they've got like a crap, you know, rubber chip little park what the 4-year-olds are knocking around in, and then you know what's for them if you're not a football fanatic and you're using the cheap football posts. You know, some people are football fanatics and they use the football facilities. Not all families are football fanatics and go and turn up and, you know, support and follow the kids. I've got a mate I used to go to school with, and his daughter plays football, and he's obsessively putting photographs up of they've won this match, they've won that match. There's all the photographs of them running around, kicking the ball, winning the league. Those people are fewer. Not even everyone who supports football and does teams gets the kids to play. But this is the thing. A lot of the teenagers, there's nothing for them. You know, what actually is for them, or even, you know, things that were for them are not there anymore. They're for new people, they're for new kids who have come up. And it's not even like they've got the different age groups communing together or playing together. Because now, you know, you're not allowed to take photos, touch kids, hang around with them, you know, and it's actually been weaponized because now, you know, if you go to parks and you're trying to teach kids, if you want to teach them football or sports or something, then there's a whole new kind of line of jokes the kids have got where they can say, you know, or if you start acting odd or something like that, they start calling it out, and then you feel threatened. This is the whole Theresa May kind of legacy, really, isn't it? As well, the people don't really know who they are or where they're from anymore. And they're inviting more and more. They're wanting to do, you know, Black History as well. There's a petition on the petition website for Black History, right? So, for example, they've built a lot of mosques and Sikh temples and things like that, so they can feel actually not alienated. But I don't know. If I went to India, I wouldn't expect there to be lots of Christian churches there. The reason why I would go to India is because I liked the country, I liked the religions were different, and the weather, and there was loads of yogis there, and if I moved to India and I moved to like a replica Cotswold village with a church, it would seem, why would I move there? Now, the question to Keir Starmer is, are Pakistani people and Indian people and so forth moving to this country because it's different and they want to be here, or that it's just somewhere to go where they want to insert or install their own country and grow it, right? Now, the thing with Rishi Sunak is that, he's a businessman, he and the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, he wants to be recognised as a Londoner. Rishi Sunak wants to be recognised, as a British businessman and so forth. Now, this is the thing. I mean, when we had all the immigration over here, what was the reason for it? Was the reason... In Australia, it's a little bit like, that's what they've done in Australia, really. They've rebuilt our culture there. It's not like, we like the Aboriginal culture and style and we want to live like that. And the same in America. So there's two different things happening. There's people who go to somewhere like India because it's different and amazing and exotic, right? But then even India itself, like, Mumbai and, Delhi and all these places are literally becoming just like over here in the cities, which you say, oh, that's progress, that's technology. But, the preservation of the place and the culture, either you go somewhere because you like it, not because you have to go there. This is the thing, and I think this is what a lot of people in England are getting annoyed with. And this new corporate model that's building all the new buildings and cities, it's kind of, it's a little bit like the little play park model where, the play park was okay for 1 or 2 generations and then you get rid of it and do a new one, right? But then it's almost kind of like so artificial that there's not really any connection with that place for a lot of people, And I think that's why there's a lot of crime level, particularly when you get the multiple dimensions of English people not feeling like there's anything for them there or they're rooted in the place, but then the addition of all the immigration and the people who moved here who also moved to a different country, but it's not even really anymore like... It's not like loads of people from India moved over here and everywhere's like a Cotswold village and it's all novel and interesting. They're moving over here and it's like, the city slums, which even the people who are from England aren't even rooted in or feel. And the only thing that they seem rooted in is a McDonald's drive-through. Like the history and heritage of the country is almost kind of like Colonel Sanders. And maybe there's some irony in the word Colonel Sanders, he's almost like sanding down everything that ever was, and all the reason now is corporate. And I really think that that's what the Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson and David Cameron, and probably going back John Major and well before Thatcher, is now. It's like it's almost kind of like... You see, remember there used to be family businesses, and if the workers almost felt like they were part of the family. Now it's the corporate family, isn't it? Like, oh, you're part of McDonald's staff, and we'll have a Christmas do, and we'll put a couple of party hats on, and maybe go out for a few drinks with the staff, on Christmas Eve. That's about all you get. It's the McDonald's uniform legacy has replaced all of the family businesses and the families and the history of everything. And Colonel Sanders has sanded everything down now. Colonel Sanders has sanded everything down now. So it's like, there isn't much history or heritage, I don't think. And I think that's why more and more of the youths kind of like don't really know where they fit in or where they belong, or maybe they're bored in between, you know. Maybe you might have said, well, you know, thousands of years ago they were just causing trouble in the wild, you know, being, you know, troublesome when people were travelling, or being brigands or whatever, you know, when people were in between towns or whatever. But I don't necessarily think that that's true. I definitely, myself, even now, things are just being obliterated or destroyed by builders at planning permission for the sake of it, at a rate that has never been seen before. You can go to some villages or towns in Lincolnshire, and literally they have hardly changed since, you know, I was little, like you know, the 1970s, 1980s. And I really like those places. Now, people who are from those places, some of those people might be bored. They might be bored. But I've just seen that programme, that Police #1 programme on Channel 5. That programme, there was a place in Norfolk, which is, the people there had never witnessed or seen any crime ever their whole lives. And then suddenly this youth went round and he was breaking into places and smashing stuff up. And the police went to catch him, right? And they apparently did apprehend him. But there wasn't actually crime like that before in that area, which makes you wonder what the police were up to before that he popped up, you know. But that's just an example. So it shows that is good evidence that those places that I'm saying, like that place in Norfolk, which previously had not seen any break-ins on like that at all whatsoever, that is actually the general case in those places, like I said, like in Lincolnshire or Louth or whatever. They haven't seen those sort of crimes or crimes like that, which means that it definitely is something to do with this urban culture and city culture and so forth, which is even starting now to drive some of the youths to behave or turn like that in those sort of areas. And what Keir Starmer is wanting to do is he wants to expand cities and urbanise more places and build more places and affect some of those other places. And all that does is spread out more and more crime. What I found is that, you know, when the Luddites were smashing machines up, we see them smash machines up. Now, back to the 1800s, right? You've got a great example there of suddenly there's an immediate and massive, intense spike in crime. Not just one youth in Norfolk going round and breaking into some houses, right? You've got everyone, in fact, everyone suddenly almost engages in voluntary crime to their employers. Because why? Because the government wouldn't lift the minimum wage up. But yet, you know, the people were doing all the work and making all the things, and, you know, someone was profiting out of it, and a lot of people were put out of work, and then they invented the Met Police to solve it. So the government, by refusing to raise the minimum wage and enforce some sort of equality, right? And don't get me wrong, way before the Industrial Revolution and machines even had factories anyway, we've got lords and barons and the House of Lords, so I don't think that they're particularly were going to be affected by the factories. They had lords and barons and earls and privileges of Parliament and House of Lords way before anyone had a factory or built mass machinery like in Telford, right? You had weavers, you had hand-skilled people, you had jewellers, blacksmiths, goldsmiths, craftspeople, family businesses, and so it's not really particularly anything to do with the earls and dukes and barons, I don't think. I think what the fact, although they might have played a role in it and had some investment in the factories and businesses, particularly from the 1700s onwards, but that didn't necessarily create them. So this whole new factory boom and factory industry, and, you know, like Warburton's and, you know, McVitie's and all these Branson, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, or whether it's Warburton's. Mr. Warburton and Warburton's Baking Factory, or whether it's Mark Zuckerberg, Warburton's knocking out bread, Mark Zuckerberg's knocking out advertisements which flash up on your screen for 10 seconds and no one really gives a fuck about and wants them to go away because they're annoying. But he's making billions out of it. He's making billions out of being an annoying twat. But I made a platform and it's all brilliant. It'd be brilliant if there were less adverts on it, Oh, but I want to make as much money then. Yes, but theoretically, it's just coding. It's just a computer program. You're telling me you can't make a computer program on a website. You're telling me you can't build a website without having to, extract billions from advertisers and spam everyone. I doubt it. A team of people could build a website identical to Facebook for free over a weekend. A university team. They don't have to make billions out of it and spam the fuck out of everyone with shit adverts that no one wants to want, annoy people, and then everyone, is blocking and banning each other because they, can't take a joke or whatever or put up with this or that. This is the thing. Now, if they would have suddenly, in the 1800s, made everyone a beneficiary out of the companies and businesses, that's not necessarily affecting the House of Lords, is it? Because the House of Lords existed way before then, and you got, Lord Mohun, Lord Moon, and so forth, knocking around, doing whatever they want. Okay, maybe they've got shipping businesses and so forth. They got people working for them, but what we're talking about is machines supposedly making things easier or making things better to do. Now, if the wealth does not increase, this is the thing. If Mr. Warburton doesn't suddenly become a billionaire from his factory and actually everyone benefits equally from it, right? Then surely they will have a lot more money to be more charitable to the people who didn't work in the factories and lost their jobs, or the people who work in the factories don't have to work there as much because they could share the shifts with the other people. So either everyone gets more money or everyone doesn't have to work as often. Now, but get some work, not no work. So the people wouldn't be unemployed because the people who... What you do is you have a lower working week. You either don't have to work a full week, right? But you split the money between half the population works in the factories so many days lower, and then the others working the other days, lower or less. But that means that they get okay money and don't have to work as many days. So surely it's for more happiness, right? Rather than working like slaves for literally next to nothing when Warburton makes it all. So this is the thing. And even with the House of Lords is not meant to be about money and financial benefit. I mean, apparently, Baron Denham, he apparently didn't make that much money. He was a lawyer, so they claim, according to the history books. If they're lying or not, I don't know. But let's go with it and say that they're telling the truth, right? If Lord Denman, who was a Whig, by the way, didn't make that much money out of his legal work, which I don't know whether I believe it or not, because lawyers usually are the ones who rip people off and make all the money. But more so now, it seems to be ridiculous. They seem to be asking insane money. I don't think that they used to rip people off as much. Now it's extortionate and demanding people who are obstructed out of the legal sector. I don't think it was as extortionate back then. It might have been expensive, but he claims that he didn't make that money. He didn't make that much money out of his profession for being a lawyer, and he served in government. I mean, he obviously had some money in the States and that, but what he's saying is that apparently he wasn't rinsing it. I don't know whether to believe it or not, but I'll go with it. But the thing with Lord Moon, they were awarded their peerages. Now, you get awarded the peerages. You're meant to be for service for doing good work, right? It's meant to be about you get the privilege of you get to go into Parliament and decide what the laws are going to be or check on what the government are doing with their laws. It's like being a knight, being knighted. It's you're doing it for the social ranking or for the award or honour. It's not for money. You get some privileges, but just because you got privileges, like if you're working in Parliament, you got immunity from prosecution, at least for the work you're doing, and you get the title and people listen to what you're saying and so forth, that doesn't just mean that purely, like Baroness M, you've got a yacht and you're doing it purely to be stinking rich. You're doing it because apparently you did some decent things that merits you to be worthy of having a position of trust to the public to do a certain job. Like Lord Anningfield was meant to have done a certain job. I mean, he's a pig farmer, and we'll get back onto this is meant to be about the farms and the inheritance tax, but, I'm going all around the long way around it. So, okay, barons and lords have estates and money, and they might have, had servants and people working for them and so forth, but, at least it was, family businesses and family artisans and skilled people and hunting and so forth. It wasn't this like pedal to the metal industry. And a lot of these people who started businesses and factories, it wasn't, some of it is like the king or the lords or the barons, investments in shipping companies and setting up America and all this, in a way, but not every multi-millionaire business owner is a member of the House of Lords, that's for sure. Now, if some of those businesses eventually got bought out in their shares and taken on by this BlackRock Vanguard company and then eventually controlled and owned by that, is a different thing. That's to do with this whole, BlackRock Vanguard problem and this deep state and who's really owning and in control of these companies as somebody scooped them all up, right? And got them all under this direct staff training, regimented policy regime, behavioural control, erasing people's heritage and history and culture and replacing it by a muck culture, basically a muck history, muck culture, when yet Charles is walking around his estates with his memorials to his ancestors in memorial and kicking leaves in the grounds and shooting his gun at pigeons and fox hunting. He's not. Maybe he is. Maybe he's like one of these border criminals who's breaking into houses in Norfolk. But maybe he's breaking into the companies. Maybe he broke into the. Maybe he was bored. Maybe he had too much. Maybe Charles and. Maybe Charles and Andrew broke the bank. Maybe they broke into the, Warburtons. Maybe they broke into the companies and businesses, broke into the enterprise, broke into, maybe they got, Sir Patrick Stewart and, Lord Cameron and Sir Nick Clegg, breaking into Facebook, maybe they've broken into not just people's houses, maybe they've broken into these companies and bought them out and hijacked them and taken them over. Maybe that's what they did. So maybe they were truants in a way. Maybe that's what's happened when they've got too much. They want everything. They want all or nothing. Maybe they want everything or nothing. I don't know. That's a good question to explore. But generally, most of the business and company owners didn't plan to or think that they were going to, sell out to investors like BlackRock and Vanguard. You'd have thought Warburton's like, I've just got a multi-billion pound bread factory, and he sells it for Baker's Born and Bread. Like, you see Warburton tries to pull off this thing that he's got this, like, Baker's Born and Bread. I've been baking bread for history, for time, well, it wasn't that much time because, he didn't have factories, so, I think that if they'd lifted them, if they'd definitely this refusal of the government to cooperate creates this massive response, which it can result in crime. But it's meant to be protected if it's political. I don't think they should have hung the Luddites. They could have just made them pay for all the machinery, like civil trials. That's where Lord Nenman went wrong, I think. But they did end up they did actually stop prosecuting them later on, I think. But you see, rather than having, right, a certain number of the public working constantly flat out for very poor money, right, while the factory was benefiting billions, they could have raised the minimum wage up, right, made so the factory beneficiary didn't really get much any richer than his workers. They were doing it for the benefit of the good of the community. Baker's Broad and Bread selling bread for everyone, just because, you know, he wants to provide bread for everyone, not all for himself, right? And then the thing is, if people were, rather than the people who lost their jobs due to the machinery, you know, requiring less people to work, all those people could actually have been working. They could have split the shifts between everyone, and all the money wouldn't have gone to the beneficiary. And then people would have had less pressure. Everyone would have had some money, right? Rather than just the workers having the money. Everyone would have had some money, but also everyone would have had some spare time free. Now, then you get a lot more, I guess, leisure industry, or else they're bored, but at least they wouldn't be completely poor and in poverty, right? At least they won't be resorting to crime. I mean, and, you know, how do they solve their boredom? I don't think they would be as bored if they could have some leisure. If you look at a lot of these other countries, like the south of France or wherever, where there's lower crime levels and they've got the easy, slower life, it would have been the easy, slower life, but resulting from the factory kind of boom. So I think the factory boom, but obviously is more intense and more work, but more productivity. But then if they split all the money a lot more evenly, then it's less miserable life for the workers and more free time for everyone if you split shift between those who are employed versus unemployed, surely. Because then, you know, you've got this kind of like half life where you've got half intense work but then half very, very relaxing and leisure, not just like 2 days a week, you know, and people get to do things that they wouldn't normally do. And then also, I don't think that they would have need to make things as expensive, you know, like going to the seaside or whatever. Plus, while everyone's at work, you know, surely, you know, if people are in factories or in businesses, in offices working, then isn't that when it would be less busy for people who aren't working to travel and get around, you know? You know, a normal Wednesday, you know, 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, usually the roads aren't supposedly meant to be that busy. But that's been messed up now because, you know, except at school times. But, you know, what they've done is they've brought all this immigration in now with their war, and they've flooded us, and they've just messed it up. Putin and the World Economic Forum and NATO just said, "Fuck you all. We're gonna blow up Ukraine, and we're gonna ruin life for everyone, and we're gonna make loads of crime in England. So then we're gonna have to bring our surveillance state that we need to watch everyone." Because that's what we want, the new tech that we want. I can't see anything happening about it because what they did as a response to the Luddites is that they just took everyone out of the courts. They removed the judicial. They removed the judicial powers of the labour force of the people. They redacted a lot of it because they were the ones who were annoyed and pissed off. So they didn't want them making all judicial decisions, definitely not in local councils or in civil cases. Remember, local councils, actually, you could have a jury making those type of decisions. It didn't have to be the aldermen, the councillors. You could ask for a jury in a lot of the council affairs, or you could ask for it to be in a court of record, which was more higher than the alderman, actually. Whenever you call in a random jury of people, it's always a higher judicial authority regarded in law than elected persons, remember, like your elected aldermen and or your councillors or your jurats. the assizes had a random jury. It didn't have jurats who were permanently elected. So this whole importance on elected persons is, they're just there really because everyone else is at work. That's their job. Doesn't mean that they're the highest level of professionalism or judicial authority. It's just their job because everyone else is doing a different job. But if something's a serious matter and you want to call a jury in, you're meant to be able to have a jury for all of those council decisions, like redevelopment of town centre, and it would come down to 12 people on a jury picked randomly and fairly, deciding whether, the town centre should be redeveloped or whether that money should go elsewhere. And I think a lot of people wouldn't vote for change. Now, Keir Starmer probably doesn't like that, but he's complaining that he's having to tax all these other people because there's no money, but yet he's dishing out all this money for these town centre redevelopments when, Dorchester or whatever it is, all these towns in the south have been less obsessed with. They liked who and what they were. They were happy with it. They weren't. It's almost like Warburton with his factory. But I think that Warburton culture, though, he's claiming that it's like, Warburton's been going for generations, but it's like, new factory. It's only Warburton himself, it's almost like a cobweb in a coffin, Warburton generations, but, there is no, it's like Colonel Sanders, it's a new factory, it's modern, he's running on tradition of, I think Warburton is like these new councillors in the town centres. It's like, this town's been going for years, but it's not actually the town that it was. It's just like, and then we get bored of it every second, like Warburton wants a new factory all the time. Why is it that some of these other towns don't want to... They don't need a skyscraper. They don't need a Warburton's bread factory. Why are these places like Tewkesbury or Winchcombe or whatever, why are they very proud and content and happy? Because a lot of those places were quite prosperous in the first place, right? Like Weaver's Cottages, like Bybury Village, right, in Oxfordshire, and they built them decent in the first place, and it was something worth protecting and preserving. And I think that with these new... You see, I don't even think Warburton... When Warburton's banging on about his tradition and his factory, it's just him. He actually means himself. He means me. It's like me. Like, I'm Warburton, me. The same staff, he might have had staff coming and going, going off to other jobs. It isn't the same people who was working there in the 1800s, that's for sure. And it's not the same factory or building. In fact, nothing of it is the only thing that he can say that is, is him. It's him himself. So, whereas these other people are actually proud about their actual, the place, they don't want to make it, it didn't need improving. And it was quite nice, right? Now, the problem with all the cities is that Labour have exploded all the new cities, but they don't seem to think they're nice, or they're not happy with them. Except in London, you've got all these huge shops in the centre of London, like massive extravagant businesses, which are like, they've got like the front of a traditional English place, but you go inside and it's like a mega store, superstore, or whatever. But, this, and what happens with the trillions at the disposal, coming on to the money now, when Charles is banging on about a military campaign beyond leaders with trillions at the disposal, this is all the money that they've actually, all this inheritance tax and all these other taxes that the governments have taken have actually been what's been able for them to build all these weapons, right? I mean, look at Biden, he's giving weapons to Ukraine. How does he even afford it? Is this inheritance tax they're taking off is going to wars? If everyone in Russia hadn't have been fleeced by the government, the government will have a piece of everyone's inheritance tax. The government inserts it as a beneficiary of the inheritance of everyone's family, right? Even though we're giving tax to it for every transaction, right? It's just wrong. theoretically, right, Russia shouldn't be able to afford weapons. Ukraine shouldn't be able to afford nuclear weapons. In fact, no government... This is the thing. What are these weapons for? If no country on planet Earth could afford to build tanks and weapons, then none of them could afford to have these dangerous wars, and there won't be a dangerous threat. But I think now the way they're going is they're reckoning, it's aliens or something, or they need to turn the guns. Once Black Vanguard have, got everyone under, Starfleet command, and everyone in the, everyone salutes at the same time, and the whole planet Earth does as commanded, then we can turn the gun into space, and now all that military power now eventually, can be. There's a threat from space, but if there's a threat from space, right? There's going to have been a threat from space from before freaking Oliver Cromwell was knocking around. It's never been an urgency or an emergency. So it seems ludicrous to suddenly say, oh yeah, we need all these weapons, for space or to blow an asteroid up or whatever. After, all this war blowing up Ukraine and so forth from the existence of those weapons in the first place. I mean, it would be something if, they had only built a weapon to shoot asteroids and nothing else, but they haven't. Tanks don't shoot asteroids. That's for starters. So you can get rid of all the tanks because you don't need tanks to shoot asteroids, right? And then you can get rid of artillery. You can get rid of guns. Guns don't shoot asteroids, so you might as well, demilitarize all the AK-47s. Hand grenades don't destroy asteroids. You can get rid of those. This is the thing. The wars are due to the government taking too much money off people. All governments taking too much money off people, and then you've still got. There shouldn't be any crime. Everyone should be quite happy. It should be like the leisure planet where people have got, for like 4 days a week at work and 3 or 4 days a week, just chilling, or in fact, it could be 3 or 4 days. Or why does it matter? It could be 3 days on, 3 days on, 4 days off, and then alternate or whatever, And you could still have people who come up with good inventions or good ideas or serve the people well, and they could still be given privileges and awards or knighthoods or whatever they're given, to say thank you for their service, and they could be put in the House of Lords and they could, be decision making on legislation. But now we're getting to a point where, really, with the technology, maybe all the people should be voting on most of the things for what the people want. But this is the thing: the people who own the companies and the businesses seem to be the ones, because they own it and it's theirs, they're the ones who should be directing and orchestrating everything, but not the people making decisions, or at least the government. And this is the thing with strategic planning. Strategic planning for who? Strategic planning for what companies, what highways companies get the contracts, what companies get all these different contracts for what we're going to do, end up doing with medical things and that lot. And this is called conflict of interest, because there's a financial profit conflict of interest. If there was no financial profit, and if the Luddites had got their way, and everyone was making things purely for the good of everyone, and you don't have to be communists like, in Russia or Poland or whatever, there wouldn't be this conflict of interest for financial incentives, surely. It would only become the pure conflict of interest would be on the vote. Should we do this or shouldn't we? And I know there are still people arguing about leaving Europe or going back in Europe, but someone's got a Facebook page when they're wanting, they're obsessed with trying to get back into Europe, when Europe are banning everything and trying to stop all the free speech and so forth. which is ridiculous. We've already had a referendum on it, you know. Anyway, so no one's going to agree all the time, but if we did have a referendum, there's a lot more on everything, and it wasn't strategically planned. You know, who's doing the strategic planning, right? You know, the public at large, or persons with interests, conflicts of interest, police chiefs. Oh, well, we're the police, and to do our job, we want cameras everywhere. MI5, MI6. To do our job better, we want more cameras everywhere. We want facial recognition. Well, that's in their interests, but we fund them, we pay for them, right? We might not want that. And if everyone had money and finance, right, then they wouldn't be resorting to breaking into bungalows in Norfolk, because they just don't do that in places like Louth and Lincolnshire as much. There isn't that type of crime, and a lot of those people are actually quite content and happy. I think that Louth and Lincolnshire, for example, is a lot more like the Cotswolds and Oxford, in the sense that it's a little bit more out of the way. I think Oxford and the Cotswolds might be a little bit more kind of like, you know, in the action of near London and what's going on. But there are a lot of places on the south coast, like Dorchester and so forth, that have been pretty much a quiet life, or a lot quieter than London. There's not this, there isn't this pressing crime, you know, in those areas, and it's definitely got something to do with more of an appreciation of your immediate surroundings, not having life, the colours enhanced on, you know, screaming audiences and, you know, exciting game shows and prizes and so forth and so forth. I actually do think that people like, even though there's some youths are bored, I do think people just like walking around their places and like going to their parks and like just looking at their village, or be just looking out the window and going, hey, look, you know, it's like a Christmas card, right? Because at the end of the day, you don't really need to go to these parks with these little plastic chip playgrounds where no one, you know, wants to get hurt or anything, or these little swings and roundabouts that are plasticky and, you know, going to be replaced in another 5 years anyway by a lot of more money they've taken off us, because, you know, maybe I'll just go for a walk because I like walking around my village. You know, walking is exercise, you know. You know, but even those places now, you know, like, let's look at Glastonbury. Well, that's a place I picked out the top of my head. So they've got all these, you know, bookshops. They've got all these, you know, kind of hippie shops for tourists and stuff like that. You know, the crime level in Glastonbury can't be that bad, even if some of the youths in the local area are bored. They're definitely not as bored as people in the middle of Birmingham and Walsall, you know. So it's kind of like, so, you know, I don't think that they are that bored, and I don't necessarily think that the crime is. The crime is definitely a result of a combination between financial lack of finance and boredom, and a lack of family or social education or kind of like order, you know. And now it's starting to. Apparently, the police are saying it's starting to spread to these areas, you know, like places like in Norfolk, you know. And Starmer wants to push it further. He wants to press on further, which is kind of going to be more of the same. And the model that they've had in the past has been that whenever we kick off and wherever they don't even everything out, what they've done is they've taken away or snuck away, either blatantly taken with force or sneaked or snuck away our ability to say no. And they did that with the juries, with the working class juries, and also there's more corruption because more and more of these assets, the people who make all the money, want to hold on to it, and they want to be the ones who make the decisions and control. We'll plan, we'll strategize, we'll plan where we're building all these drive-throughs, we'll be the ones who strategize, we'll put the applications to the councils, we've got all the lawyers and so forth. And, the councillors are the ones who claim they're voting on it, not the people. The two major political parties as well, they can't exist in law because, they've got all these selflessness policies, which you can't operate on a selflessness policy and have control of a council. It just doesn't work. But anyway, back to the inheritance tax. So maybe some of those farms wouldn't have got so big in the first place. Maybe they wouldn't have got so huge. But I don't think the answer is taxing them, or not taxing them in the way that that we're currently saying. Because according to, I've been going on absolutely ages now, and I wanted to just try and make a really short video just about this inheritance tax and this charter. According to these ancient rights and liberties, they can't tax inheritance. And I know for sure that they couldn't tax personal property. No tax on personal property in London. Well, your house is personal property, isn't it? Well, that's it. It's Magna Carta, the ancient liberty of London, is no tax on personal property. So that must be when you inherit it as well. Not just when you've got it, okay, you're paying road tax on the car, but what we're saying is, if you buy a guitar, right, unless you're renting it, if you buy a guitar and you own it, right, they can't tax you for playing that guitar, right, because it's your personal property or having it, right, in your house. So you can't be charged, they can't tax you for having the guitar, right? Or even probably a gun. You buy a gun license, but they don't charge you, tax to have it. You pay tax when you buy it, right? But the thing with the house is you've already got it. It's already in the generations and families, so it's already owned, and it's not been sold or donated to charity. It's a continuation. And I think that's what this Liberty of London means, that it's a continuation. And the thing is, right, this is what I'd do, and maybe a lot of those farms shouldn't have got so huge anyway. Maybe they should have raised the minimum wage, and maybe everyone should have more money, and maybe we should have more juries and public decisions. But I don't think it shouldn't have been done through social media and through all these horrible spam adverts and all these groups where you can't say this or can't say that in these groups. It's kind of messed up the whole status quo of it. When a proper court with a proper jury and putting proper evidence and a proper due legal process is not, it's not kind of like, it's not infected or suffered, like, they don't have advertisements in courts, they don't have buttons, it's not like a game show when you have the jury and then one of the jurors pushes a button and electrocutes the defendant or blocks them, or the defendant doesn't like one of the juries and blocks them. I think you can challenge jurors, but they don't, do they? It's not, I mean, the current culture they're getting on the Facebook groups is that, they would have, challenged many jurors and blocked a lot of them, but it's a rare thing to challenge a juror. It just goes to show that, people aren't just blocking everyone all the time, if you see what I mean, right? That's a good example for that. But, I think that, basically, I think it's illegal for the government to tax inheritance, and I don't know how long they've been doing it for. Maybe we could find out. We need to look into it when it started. But this is before Magna Carta, and I think I'm pretty sure that when Magna Carta says that London shall have all its ancient rights and liberties in Magna Carta, well, actually the ancient London liberties are older than the actual Magna Carta itself, according to this, right? So they're older than Magna Carta. So not being taxed on personal property, right? Now, we know that they used to tax the sale of certain goods and things like that, merchants, but we're talking about once you own it, right? I actually think that this, This is actually older than the Magna Carta Liberties of London, because this goes right back to just after 1066. So this is actually older than the ancient liberties of London. Or actually, maybe. Oh no, because Magna Carta was 1215. What date? Just let me see what date. Actually, I think it was making it sound like he did this straight away. Oh, it was given to the London. Sorry, I'll have to apologise for getting the date wrong. It was given to the London. Oh no, in 1067. Yeah, so that's way before 1215. So that's way before 1215 or even 1297. So this is literally just after the conquest. So the Charter of London is actually way older than Magna Carta. So when David Cameron and all these Oxford students are banging on about Magna Carta being the foundation of law, well, and obviously you've got the Laws of Edward the Confessor as well, way before that, but they're all kind of like, it's a collection of, it's like it's a collection of different laws which have been put together, which is that wheel reef laws in there. This is definitely gesturing towards what those laws were. So I don't actually think that they can lawfully tax you on inheritance, because it's tax on personal property. Inheritance tax is a tax on owned personal property, not purchasing it. It's once owned, right? And you aren't selling it. You aren't selling it on to your family. So I don't think that inheritance tax has to be illegal, at least in London. Inheritance tax has to be illegal in London, surely, according to this, and adopted by Magna Carta, because it says London shall have all its ancient liberties, which don't necessarily have to be in the Charter, but the Charter adopts them because they were prior to the Charter. So you can actually lawfully tax inheritance, and anyone who's been taxed on it has been taxed unlawfully, illegally, at least in London. And I think that Edinburgh and maybe some other the boroughs had these charters. So that means if you live in a city or something like that, but that's an ancient custom, right, liberty in principle for the country, surely, you know. But definitely for London, without a doubt. So all those farmers in London the other day was highly significant, because people in London, at least, shouldn't pay any tax, and that includes farmers, on inheritance. Now, if Starmer wants to make some money back from somewhere else, then he should put the minimum wage up. He's always complaining about, my father was a toolmaker. Well, he's not a toolmaker when someone builds a toolmaking factory and his dad goes bankrupt because no one wants to pay for a toolmaker's skills anymore because there's a factory banging them out instead, right? So, we need a dramatic increase in minimum wage. Now, the thing is everyone just going to go, buy loads of food and become obese? Well, not if you put regulations on foods like what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is wanting to do and make it so there aren't any unhealthy foods. And also remember, when people are working all day, they're exercising, but also when they're not working all day, if they're not going to be working as much, they're going to be, doing exercise and things that they want to do, which is probably maybe more exercise than just, standing around or sitting in an office, So I think people will exercise more, Is that going to make the roads more busier? Well, firstly, we're making things that we shouldn't be making. There's a lot of horrible, nasty foods out there which shouldn't be being made to start with. And it's the television programmes, the mainstream TV, that is the spoilt kid, the kind of like the awkward person in the room. It mainly the women, like loose women, privileged women, not parliamentary privileged women, but what I mean to say is, ladies who like cooking, buns, tarts, all these, all these TV shows, all this. You see, what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden wanted to do is they wanted to ban free speech on social media, right? So you can't say what you want. There's a lot more harm than me giving my honest, true opinion, even if I'm going to say, Philip Schofield's, wanker or whatever, right? And, or even if it's a joke, right? There's a lot less harm in that than a lot of these foods that are just being banged out and people being addicted to them and so forth. And the problem with the main TV channels and the producers of those shows and the directors, who have all got far too much money and funding anyway, and people are now just happy making DIY homemade stuff with their YouTube channel, right? And all these big movies and that, is that the big movies have just been spoiled rotten and had more money than God to make all these, Marvel comic book films and all these sets. And all that money could have been used to make real life more enjoyable, not as extravagant as a fantasy film. And apparently most people don't actually want to have an adventure in real life. Most people, apparently all these TV show, ironically, it's the morning TV programs and the calendar news and all these, Loose Women and Jeremy Vine, who are complaining, right, that people are kicking off. They're complaining that there's protesters climbing up things. Yet, when you say, oh, no, we're going to shut down the cinema, oh, no, we're not going to have, Spider-Man films anymore, or The Terminator, or, whatever, then Jeremy Vine's complaining, going, oh, no, we want to stop the theatre, we can't stop the films, we can't stop the movies, but we want to stop free speech. We want to stop you saying what you want. Well, Arnold says what the fuck he wants when he's in a film. I'll be back, motherfucker. He says what he wants when he's in a movie. This is the thing, the money from the profits from the money industry, which is taken from everyone else, and the money used on it, right, to make one place look a certain way just for 5 minutes in a film, could have been made to preserve, protect, and uphold all these beautiful places, which wouldn't, but I mean, the councillors don't even like, I don't know what it is with these local councils. They don't like themselves. They don't like the actual place. It's literally, like getting the Castle Grayskull playset, and then next Christmas you chuck it in the bin. You're bored of it, right? And then they want Snake Mountain, or then they've got Lego Hospital. These councillors and they don't know what they want, and they're not happy with themselves. And I don't know what it is about certain places. It's mainly the metropolitan ones, because the metropolitan ones are the new ones, which didn't necessarily have much history. The metropolitan councils definitely are the ones that there isn't any history there before the city or before the town, right? So there isn't really anything to be proud of and preserve and protect like you get in places like Glastonbury or Tewkesbury or Winchcombe, or whether it's somewhere in Louth, or wherever, where the local people tend to be, they tend to have always liked it and been proud of it, and when they walk around it, and there's, I used to walk down here with my granddad or whatever, and that's where there's less crime, particularly if you're a kid, right? And you used to go somewhere with your grandparents, why would you want to break into somewhere and nick things from somewhere where you used to walk on with your granddad and you used to enjoy it and go to, the post office or whatever it was? That seems to be going now with this. The police are going on about, the police are going on about Norfolk with these new crimes that suddenly popped up, which they didn't have before. Those people that have never encountered anything like that, due to the new pressures and forced change and social media culture and so forth, which cannot be a good thing. We know from the past that everyone kicked off because of the technology, and they wanted a pay rise, right? And they didn't get it. And in fact, then the government removed their capacity to stop it by whatever means, whether it was petitioning. All the petitions got burned in Parliament, the ones that didn't get read out, and they removed the judicial power and put it into these, these stooges, and I know the stooges because I've been in front of them, who if you say that something's red, and they will blatantly tell you that it's green or yellow. Your Honour, this is a red piece of card. No, how dare you? You're delusional. Well, it's a red piece of card. They want what they're trying to do is they're trying to make you disbelieve reality. Until you because you're holding up a red piece of card, right? And it is clearly a red piece of card because it's red and it's card, and the judge can't handle the fact that it's a red card. He just blows a short circuit and commands you that you're a criminal because you hold up a red card and says it's a red card, right? You can't take it. It's not a red card. It's yellow. No, you're delusional. This is a red card. You're a criminal. This is the thing. But it's psychological abuse. And these courts are not a court of record, and there's no jury. So these magistrates, these stooges, are actually abusers and offenders, like like DJ Watson, for example. I believe that he's a stooge, that he's a serial offender, that he's a dangerous man to society, also causing psychological damage and harm. The Parliament Petitions Committee are doing this at the moment. You submit a petition, right, and they'll say, we don't know what you're asking. Well, but 5 people have signed it. If 5 people have signed it, how can they knew what I was asking, or they wouldn't have signed it? You require 5 citizens to check it, it's in the language of English. How can you know what I'm asking? Either they are they're not fit for the job. They can't do the job. Or they've got some issue, personal problem. I mean, you might as well say, what's causing that criminal to go around Norfolk breaking into houses, that have never had break-ins before. What's causing these members of Parliament, elected members who have been appointed to the Petitions Committee, to reject something on the basis not of something that it's not Parliament can do? I don't know what you're saying. That means that they can't understand people when they're talking to them. That means that if someone says, "Excuse me, what time is it?" they say, "I don't know what you're asking me," or could I have a cheese sandwich, please? Or I don't know what you're saying. They're dumb. A lot of these MPs are like, Therese, even Gareth Johnson MP, Theresa Villiers, they've come, they've gone. They've voted in, they've gone. Lucy Fraser, she was Secretary of State of the whole country. Here today, gone tomorrow. We've got a revolving door on Parliament now. We've got Cameron, Theresa May, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss, Boris Johnson, now Keir Starmer. I don't think there's ever been as many Prime Ministers going through the revolving door in history. And I think Mr. Putin must be scratching his head. I think he's laughing at England. He thinks that it's some kind of, game, and he's made it, illegal to take the mick out of him, because he thinks that, rulers should be emperors and serve for a lifetime, In fact, I'm surprised Putin, it's a miracle, really, that the Americans have said that you can only be president twice or something like that. Well, I think you can only be president twice. Maybe you can't, but I thought I'd read that. Apparently Trump cannot be president again. So it's not, once or twice, it's not that much of a big deal, is it? It's only twice, it can't be more than 2, so it's either 1 or 2, it's one or the other, right, or none. So, it's not like it's going to be the next, Putin's in a very privileged position that he can kind of be some kind of emperor. So, our Prime Ministers are just going in and out the door like there's no tomorrow. So, these MPs, there was loads of MPs standing down. There's loads of MPs being removed from their parties or having the whip withdrawn. At the moment, it's extremely volatile and unstable because they're breaking the law. And then what it turns out is that the Constitution is incoherent. It's actually wrong and in error. And what we've got is then we come to this Liberty of London and, no tolls within London, which there aren't. The tolls are outside the actual city, and we know that for a fact. And, it's become corrupted, and only since 2002, is not that long ago, unruly leaders who break the law. Just like DJ Watson, who denied rights, even though they're written in plain English. It's the problem is when you submit a petition, right, and it's clearly in the English language, and these committee members in Parliament elected say, I don't know what you're asking. It's almost like DJ Watson saying, no, it's all right with the subject to petition the King, and all prosecutions for doing so are illegal. No, they're not. Well, it says it there. I don't know what it means. Well, you know what it means. It's in English. It's in English. In law. That's what we're here for. It's a court in England with law written in English, right? But he can't handle it. And I think that's a problem now with this government and Starmer. They're going to have to handle that. We've got a constitution and it's there for a reason. And really what Starmer wants to do is somehow be able to do what Colonel Sanders is doing and sand it all down or rip out the roots or whatever, whichever, and build a muck government with muck laws, install a new drive-through government. And to be honest, you might as well say it's a drive-through government at the moment because there's that many prime ministers being driven through it. That it is like a muck government. It's like a muck drive-through. We've got ministers coming in and going out like there's no tomorrow. Some of them are managing miraculously to stay there for a very long time. But some of them have been there for a little bit of a long time. But not like Barry Shearman or Jeremy Corbyn or David Davis MP. But this Jamie Stone has been there. Well, he hasn't been there as long as I've been doing my petition campaign. He hasn't been there as long as I've been doing the petition campaign, that's for sure. But, they don't really, if you want to be a politician and be a candidate, the people coming forward really to be MPs should be people who have studied it at university or college and done like the degree in politics. That's, I think hasn't Cameron and Johnson supposed to have been done politics, but even they don't really know the law properly and they end up becoming corrupt. So, we haven't got a government. We've got a long-established, ancient, customary country with people, the Northern European people, but they're distinctive to England, which has ancient customs and traditions. We've got an army, an armed force, which protects that, which is what it's protecting. The armed force is protecting the physical land area of the island and the ancient traditions and customs of the people and them. Yet we're being invaded by, all these boats and foreigners coming in because of a provoked war on purpose to sheepdog them in so they can have an excuse that there's more crime and they can bring in the cool new technology, which we're really opposed to, like the Luddites were opposed to the factories and machinery because of the minimum wage. Well, we're opposed to the surveillance because it's an invasion of privacy. Well, that's an invasion. It is an invasion of our privacy, which is ancient traditions and customs. And it's a physical invasion of the country, which the Navy haven't stopped. But we've got an ex-MI5 guy or security services guy that said that the Navy aren't doing their job or they're not allowed to do the job, so they're not protecting our borders. So that's failed. So that means that the Prime Minister or the government are encouraging a physical invasion And Putin is almost like the sheep dog. Ruff, ruff. Putin is the dog. Is like, and what it is that Boris Johnson was whistle. Boris Johnson was the farmer blowing the whistle, saying, "Oh no, don't back down, Zelensky, don't back down, don't do any deals with Putin for peace, don't back down." Our government and Biden are blowing the whistle, right? And they're they're getting Putin to bark at the sheep, right? And Poland and all Ukrainians, and chase them all into England, get them into the pen. And that's what's happening, because they're all corrupt, greedy politicians. Putin's got an empire. He's an imperial emperor. He serves for life. And he must be laughing. He's laughing at our MPs who are. He must think that it's a circus, a comedy show, Putin in England. He must be scratching his head and not know what's going on with this politics, because they're not making the people happy. And they're threatening us with a surveillance state, which we don't want, and we shouldn't need it, and we shouldn't have these crime levels. And these other countries should be able to sort themselves out, particularly after Tony Blair's been sales repping, McGovernment's been installed everywhere. This is the thing. We shouldn't even force McGovernments on anyone. With Tony Blair's, sideshow travelling bandwagon, like fold-out government show, hey, install McGovernment onto your, system today, and just press, just insert the disc and press next. I'll guide you through it. In fact, I'll train your staff for you if you want. It's a new Tony Blair staff training regime. This is the thing. Imposing ourselves on other countries, just like this whole surveillance state's been imposed on us. So anyway, I don't think that they can. I think that if the government is inserting itself into so much percentage of an inheritance, then it is an inheritor. The government is making itself an inheritor. An inheritor. That means that the government is in effect acting like it's a little child, a part of the family. But where does that tax go? Is it going to King Charles? No. He's claiming that he wants that money for everyone. So that means that everyone in England is an inheritor of everyone else's property, but it says that they're not to be. But how did they get that much money in the first place if they've got that much in excess that Starmer thinks that he should take some off them? Well, because he allowed the company to make that much profit in the first place, right? Why doesn't Starmer just say, right, I'm raising the minimum wage up, or doubling the minimum wage, or even tripling the minimum wage, right? Why doesn't Starmer, instead of this inheritance tax nonsense, right? Because I'm starting to doubt whether inheritance tax is lawful, because that means the government or everyone else is an inheritor of other people's things. Partially, they're taking some of the inheritance money, which they can't. But how did any of these companies get so big and excessively wealthy where Starmer would want to tax them or target them, right? When apparently they were exempt. Everyone should be exempt. Because it's definitely an ancient liberty of London, for sure now, where you can't tax inheritance. I don't think that you can. Because why should the government insert itself as an inheritor, or everyone else? If everyone else gets part of the inheritance, it means that the heirs aren't the inheritor. It means that everyone is. Because when you get up to 20% to the government, it's like Rod, Jane, Freddie and the government are the inheritors, which is not Rod, Jane and Freddie. It's as much nearly as if he's have had 20 kids, right? It's as much as if you had 20 kids, it means that the government might as well be one of your children, or the public. And that evades the point of saying that your kids are the heirs. You might as well just say that when you die, all your things go to the government, or all your things go to the community, and then who's going to decide who has what? It evades the point in the thing existing, in the principle of it. And if you have everyone in London who are exempt from inheritance tax, it's not fair in the whole country. Everyone really would want to move into London. Jeremy Clarkson then wouldn't be wanting to buy a farm to evade it. He'd be going into London to evade it, which is literally what they just did the other day. Was that a symbolic gesture? No one was talking about that, but was that the symbolic gesture of someone a little bit more clever who knew what was going on in London and why they had that rally in London? And Starmer staged the whole thing. And then is there going to be more, what happens if they say we're going to triple or double the minimum wage? Well, you wouldn't get all the workers turning up in London then. If Starmer said he was going to triple the minimum wage, right, or double it, right, you wouldn't get all the workers and the poor people and the working class and what you would call, the thieves and criminals or whatever, dropping on London with protests. That's for sure. You would get all the Tories, all the Conservatives. You would literally get Warburton, Branson and Warburton would be turning up. All the actual Baroness M it wouldn't be Gail Bradbrook turning up in London with a pink boat. Baroness Moon would be getting a boat from the Mediterranean and putting them back in an HGV, and she'd be driving that into Parliament Square. Baroness M would be bringing her own yacht from the Mediterranean on the back of a freaking truck, HGV, blocking the street with it if they doubled or tripled the minimum wage. And then she could be like Bjork. She could be like Bjork on the back of a freaking lorry going through London, singing Violently Happy or something, This is the thing. But not all members of the House of Lords are these big corporate empires. There's a hell of a lot of people in the House of Lords. There shouldn't be as many people in the House of Lords, but they're meant to be there because they're trustworthy, competent to make decisions in government and do work for the country, not because they're absolutely loaded, which is supposedly meant to be the Whig model of Baron Denman, that he was supposedly doing it for the good of the country, not for personal financial profit or gain, which is meant to be the whole point in it, right? So, you're going to get all the bit, but I think the government would have a lot less trouble on their hands, a lot less protesting if they did do that, because there's a lot less business owners than there are workers. So even if they're going to have a lot less people available and willing to turn up in London to protest if they say we're double or tripling the minimum wage, because they're at least the major percentage of the country don't own businesses, so would stay at home, right? Now, are those people the people who are doing all the terrorist attacks, like the hacks on the computers and the crashes, the train crashes, the signal failures and all things like that? Who's actually doing it, This is the thing, but we need to find out who's doing those terrorist acts. And I'm not talking about these Muslims and Asians who are, blowing themselves up on bridges and stuff like that, or at airports. In fact, if they were going to double or triple the pilots' wages and all the airport staff, would Branson take off in one of his? Would Branson run down to the airport and take off? And would he crash? Would he crash his own plane into Westminster? Would Branson and fly his own plane in Parliament? If they said to Branson, all your staff are going to have their wages tripled, would Branson be furious? And would Branson himself fly a plane into Parliament where he crash it into the freaking, never mind it getting burned down? Or would he jump out of a parachute onto it? But are these people who own the companies with all the money they've got and the resources and the finance, like Branson, are they more dangerous than their workers when they're all turning up in their hundreds of millions, like at this farmers demo, or actually, no, well, the farmers were the owners of the farms, not the workers, but, or any demo. This is the thing. And really, doesn't the problem go back to the Luddites or even before? But I'm choosing that because I think the burning of Parliament being sort of within that circumference of events in time is quite significant. Even Guy Fawkes didn't manage to blow Parliament up, but he tried, even though we've got a bonfire night every year. And it's nothing to do with Guy Fawkes. They used to burn popes on there, apparently. So, on bonfires. So, and I think they had bonfire celebrations anyway, probably going back to Beltane and all these seasons. So, this is a problem, right? If you raise up the minimum wage, then none of these companies will become ridiculously in excess. But the money they do make, they'll have to choose what they do with it. Do they want to expand massively in their operations, or do they want to take the money out for themselves for their own wealth, right? But this is the problem. We've had too much food and overproduction anyway. There's certainly a lot of these chemicals, toxins, compounds, domestos type bleachers, all these things which Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is complaining are polluting the rivers, like the Hudson River and so forth. They've had to clean up. They wouldn't have had all these problems. This is what Extinction Rebellion are kicking off about. So certainly there's no law in the ancient customs and traditions which says that there's a specific amount of money that anyone should be paid for work. So if you do it that way, then surely that is a legal route to do it. Why do it on inheritance when really it looks like in the law that there isn't meant to be an inheritance tax? Because why should, if someone not part of the family is a beneficiary, whether it's the government as a body or the king, or whether you say it's everyone, the whole public, then your own kids are no longer just a beneficiary of your property anymore. Then the public are. So there's no point saying that the heirs will be the heirs, because it isn't the heirs anymore, it's the heirs and everyone else. So it writes it off. There's no point having it. So you either have it or you don't. There's no point having something written if it's kind of like it doesn't mean anything or do what it says it does. So, I mean, this is the thing. And, if you pay people more money, maybe they'll work better and more willingly, unless they, maybe they could be more stricter in the factories, to say that, I don't know, would they be more slack and not do as good job if they're getting paid more? But I tend to find that if you, work, if you've got more days free when you do go to work, it's more of a novel thing that you're there less. So maybe you put more into it, maybe you put more effort into it or more care into it. You might be less practiced in it because you're not doing it, you're not as proficient or as professional if you're only doing it a few days a week as opposed to all the week. But at the end of the day, that's only because you yourself become sort of mechanical. And, if you have more rest, I don't know, maybe you come back with more vigour. But anyway, so I'm going to have to wrap this up now because I've been going on for hours. So I know William the King. Friendly salutes, William the Bishop and Godfrey the Portive and the Burgess within London, both French and English, and I declare that I grant you. Actually, and it's also talking about French and English people, but it doesn't mention any other countries, so maybe the ancient traditions and customs of England now are adopting French people at that point. to be all law-worthy as you were in the days of King Edward, and I grant that every child shall be his father's heir after his father's days, and I will not suffer any person to... It doesn't actually... This is quite significant here, because it could very well have just said son. It could have said son, right? It could have said your son will be the heir. And that would have been probably... But they clearly weren't that sexist back then. And obviously it's the right of the subjects to petition, not just the right of the male subjects to petition. So it wasn't as sexist as they make out. It was more to do with it was traditional for women to do certain things, like look after kids, and more traditional for men to do other things. And I think that usually in the voting anyway, the family always voted as a family unit, and only one person per household in the aristocracy could vote. So it wasn't like the women weren't allowed to vote. It was kind of like, you know, if the husband was a Whig, why would a Whig marry a Tory? They wouldn't get on too well, surely. They'd have arguments all the time. Usually a man and a woman marry because they have similar views, so they'd have like a Whig estate, a Whig family, or a Tory family, and usually the man and the woman would put their voting together for one estate. That was how it was. So it wasn't necessarily just the women's vote in the Representation of the People Act, which has been disputed. And women have had the right to petition. Otherwise, you know, John Beswick and Henry Burton's wives wouldn't have been able to petition for their husbands being released from prison to the House of Commons. You know, so in the Cromwell government, in the Commonwealth government, so it wasn't that sexist. It was more of a tradition thing rather than sexism. It says children. Every child shall be his father's heir. So, and this is the thing, right? How can the government isn't a child, and he's definitely not the child of the father, and neither is the rest of the public. So if Starmer takes, right? If Starmer takes massive percentage from these farms, right, and gives it to the people, the public purse, that means that everyone is there, or of everyone's estate, depending on how big it is. Which is kind of ridiculous, because it's, you know, in that case, then, you know, does that mean that we're all going to get a piece of the royal palace? You know, does that mean that, you know, does that mean that, why don't they tax Charles more, you know? Why don't we all, you know, this is the thing. Charles is still even collecting monies from, Charles is collecting monies from certain islands, duchies and so forth. You know, it's a miracle that it's not the Duchy of London, isn't it? You know, and he's not collecting money from people in London just for owning property there. That's the irony, isn't it? The irony is that London is meant to be in the law and history of England, in the ancient customs and law of England. It's quite the opposite of one of the duchies, because the duchies, they all give the royal money. So, you know, even while I don't even know if they can buy it there, but they still have to pay monies if they're not allowed to buy it. I'll have to look into that. But anyway, so yeah, how can anyone in London, in a way, it's like the opposite of a duchy. In a way, London is an anti-duchy, or so some of these farms, but they had an exemption anyway. But I think Starmer's wanting to take the exemption away. But what about the other farms? And what about inheritance tax in general? According to this, I don't think that their inheritance tax cannot be lawful in London. It's almost like an absolute anti-duchy. It's like a complete anti-duchy in a way. But I don't know about the rest of the country. you know? Maybe it is an ancient custom of England. And if it means it in here, why does it not mean it from everywhere else? I guess we're going to have to add this now to the whole Magna Carta claim. We're going to have to add this to the whole tolls within London. I mean, to be honest, I don't think it'll get any better, because from how history has gone and how we've got where we've been, there's always been a sneaky opposition to it, and a sneaky, somehow thwart the efforts of the masses by somehow, taking the juries away, or reducing them, or only leaving them for serious criminal matters, and not council matters that matter to all of us, which ended up by people getting unhappy. People becoming unhappy. I think the government's main premise is that it wants to make progress. But progress in what? Progress in crime reduction. Progress in stopping invasions of privacy. Progress in what? What is progress? Well, Elon Musk thinks progress is having cool satellites around the planet. Elon Musk thinks that